Hello, everybody. D. Wilmore, head of brokerage here at Radius. In this session, what we're going to be talking about is property addendum and advisories. All right. Each and every property has different and unique addendums or attachments or additional language that may go with them. And as we're going into this section, we'll talk a little bit about the different properties that may have additional addenda and advisories. For instance, a probate in line item 4A, if that box was checked, that means that someone's died and the property needs to be adjudicated by a judge or in probate court because there was no will or it was unclear as to how the property should be dispersed. That would be a probate agreement purchase addendum. All right, you're agreeing to buy that. And again, sometimes probate takes a while because it's the court that has to approve everything. Is it a manufactured home? In which case that would require an additional addendum. A manufactured home could be a mobile home or a manufactured home, a home that was built in a factory and shipped on the back of a truck to where it reaches its final destination. Is it a tenant occupied property? Was it a rental and you're buying a rental? Because this would be subject to tenant rights. So you should check whether or not the tenants are going to remain in the property. Is it tenancy in common to where, the owners all have a share in a property, what's called undivided interest in a house that may have been a single family house at one time, but now has been subdivided into different units. Okay, so that's a tenancy in common. Or stock cooperative is similar. The difference is it's a corporation that owns the property and each respective owner has a certain percentage of stock in that corporation. Excuse me. And then other addendum that may be included could be a backup offer, or there are other offers that were written and yours is pretty good, but the seller has already gone into contract with someone, and should that contract fall apart, then they'll take your offer next. That would be a backup offer addendum. Okay, is it a short sale? Meaning the property is worth less than what is owed, and the bank is willing to, allow it to be sold for less than what it's worth. Are there septic, well, or property monuments or propane on the property? That would require an additional addendum. And again, guys, Zip Forms is a very smart program. So the minute you check any of these boxes, it will automatically add the associated addendum with this purchase agreement. Okay. Buyer seller advisories, buyer investigatory advisory, or buyer investigation advisory, which is saying that you want to make sure that your buyer understands what they're buying. It's doing their due diligence. If they want to hire a general property inspector to come out and do a property inspection, that's the buyer's right, even in a competitive market, even at the risk of losing in a competitive market. It's always a good idea to make sure that you're advising the buyer of their rights to do that thing. And that's included. The buyer investigation advisory is included in this purchase agreement already, as is the wire fraud agreement, which we went through in an earlier session, along with the Fair Housing and Discrimination and the California Consumer Privacy Act, right? We're very concerned about the privacy of an individual. So these documents are automatically included in the purchase agreement. If we're in a wildfire disaster area, we want to make sure we're advising them of that. We live in California. Each and every year, we have these devastating wildfires. So if they're in a high fire hazard severity zone, make sure you're checking that. Is it a trust, right? If you check that. Is it a bank-owned property? You would also known as an REO. You want to check that. Okay. Statewide buyer and seller advisory, which is a long 12-page document, which is essentially a summary of all the things that could potentially be problematic in a real estate transaction. You may want to check that to make sure that your buyer is well informed of what they're purchasing. We've already talked about a short sale and probate. Okay. Guys, I can't stress enough, it's important for you to make sure that you understand the residential purchase contract fully. As a matter of fact, it makes you look like more of a professional, and it instills trust and confidence when you're working with buyers. All right, guys, as always, thanks for participating. I will see you next session.